All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of PWGC's Environmental Echo. I'm Kris Almskog, a professional geologist, Senior Vice President here at PW Grosser Consulting. I'm filling in for Paul Boyce today for this edition of the podcast. A little bit about me. I've been with PWGC for over 25 years. I've worked in a variety of environmental sectors, mining, aggregate production, permitting, material recycling, and remediation projects and dredging projects. That background has enabled me to experience many of the environmental issues facing the region, Long Island, and the state, including waste handling, which is a great segue to today's topic. We wanted to get into talking about the waste management issues facing Long Island, and we have a great guest with us today. It's Toby Carlson, chairman of the Carlson Corp. They're a Kings Park-based company that focuses on addressing the region's solid waste management issues. His firm has developed a regional asset management system, a RAMS, which is a unified waste data and governance system using an AI-driven format. This effort stems from multiple waste issues on Long Island facing us, including the region's one of the most pressing issues, closing of a local landfill. But I think we're going to open up the topic and get wider than those areas. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Toby Carlson. And Toby, if you could kind of give a little background on yourself to start, just kind of...
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Toby Carlson, and as you said, I'm the chairman of Carlson Corp and president of Town Line Rail. And I've been working to try to find solutions for Long Island and beyond, and I appreciate this opportunity. So let's dive in.
Great. So if you could provide a little background just about your company's history, how it got started, how you've kind of developed it over the past few years.
So my great-grandfather arrived here in the country from Sweden in 1880, and we started farming in Kings Park. And farming delved into the contracting business, delved into rail transportation in Kings Park, bringing in the materials that built the Kings Park Psychiatric Center. After that, my grandfather was in the contracting business. When they used to make concrete products out of brick, he figured out how to make them out of precast concrete. And he patented the cesspool in 1947.
Okay.
After that, my family went into the precast business and the mining and sand and gravel business. And then after that, in 1999-2000, I dropped out of college to buy the small recycling company. At that point in time, it was a tenant-based business on my dad's property. And then I got involved in the business, and it's sort of chugged along since.
Okay. All right. Great. And for some of the audience, mining on Long Island is a long history, and a lot of the building products, concrete, asphalt that we use for construction come from aggregate, which is mined out of the ground, and it's facing regulatory hurdles on its own right. So, I know one of the things that some of our other guests have spoken about are those hurdles, and there's an issue with Long Island. We're on an island, getting material on and off the island efficiently, cost-effectively, and environmentally, friendly ways, which I think we'll hop onto. I mean, and one of the things that you're looking to do is use your proximity on the rail spur, to look for more environmentally friendly ways to move material on and off the island. Can you kind of talk about what you'd like to get done?
Sure, of course. So kind of that becomes that's a great question. And at the end of the day, we are an island, and we have a limited amount of resources on Long Island, and we have a limited amount of everything. And everything that comes in Long Island, obviously, if we can't produce it here, it comes in by truck. And that's a bottleneck. It's 3 bridges, it's traffic, and it's driving through lots of communities. So the whole idea and the premise of Town Line Rail was to create solutions that were way ahead of what our needs would be. Due to the, I think this political climate that dictates whether or not we can use our resources on Long Island for Long Islanders. the issue becomes, do we actually recognize that we have needs? What are those needs and how do we fill them? The sand pits out east, my father's sand pit, they all provided materials to build the city. And now the sand pits out east still provide to build the city, to build our towns, to build everything. But as our resources are extremely limited, they become pressure points for community and politics to erupt into challenges. And what we haven't, I don't think we've grasped totally, is the environmental impacts of the whole system that we've created over the last 50 years, and how that system was built on premises and decisions that aren't relevant anymore. We are now in 2025, and we have a growing population. Even though it's somewhat stable, our needs haven't changed. We still need to develop things. We still need to build things. We still need to maintain things, and that requires aggregates and materials. As soon as politics becomes the death of the sand pits or the death of the recycling facilities or the death of projects to create critical infrastructure, we see the degradation of a society as a whole. The death of those industries is not the industries themselves, but the people that don't understand them. And I think we've done a disservice to over the decades. We've villainized, and in some ways, some of it's justified, some of it's not. There were a lot of operators that happened in 1980s, 1990s before the laws changed, when some things were before the laws were changed, and it created villains out of people. And it's still happening today, where we see these sand pit owners out east that are trying to getting shut down when they have pre-existing non-conforming uses. The issue comes on those particular uses is, are we judging it by politics, or are we judging it by factual driven data? Are we creating more problems or less problems? Are we fixing windshields but ripping down our foundations of our communities? And at the end of the day, I think that's what we really have to be genuinely aware of, is that the industry is not the problem. The industry is the solution. The problem is the communication, the problem is the awareness, and the problem is education. And I think that, SECRA is a gift. SECRA is a sword of truth. It does deep environmental analysis. It does the deep dive in everything. And I think you guys are intimately aware of the SECRA process. I think the problem is in our communities, in our county, and as our towns, when we look at things, we go on an agenda of politics. How many people are complaining about what and when and where, and what do we need to shut down to keep the complaining quiet? If we're realistic with ourselves, and I think it is, I think we are being realistic, is that we don't operate in a vacuum. We're one big community. And if we shut down those sand pits, instead of having sand pits driving sand locally from one end of Long Island to the other to the city, we now have sand pits shipping sand from New Jersey or places beyond on trucks through the cities, coming all the way out to the east end of Long Island in Montauk or Kings Park or wherever, and we're not calculating the cost of those things. And I think before we shut down businesses, before we kill things, I think we have to look in the mirror and make an honest assessment of what the factual data is on what happens if we kill the project. What are the impacts then? What does it do to our costs? What does it do to our environment? What is the long-term environmental harm of sending 60,000 trucks a year driving on and off Long Island, instead of recognizing our resources as being precious, protecting the industries, giving balance to industry, and allowing industries to sort of bond with communities, where communities can recognize the value, and in return the industries can protect the communities. And I think if I have to summarize it like that, I think that that's the clearest way I could do it.
No, totally agreed. And I think what you're getting at too, a lot of it has to come down with the perception and fear in some aspects. A lot of it comes down to people already having they don't want something, and they find the facts to suit what they want to believe. And I think we were talking about it before we started, but yeah, how do we how do we as a community, as an island, start to change the mindset, change the education, change the way that we as a wider community, the island, start to focus on that, and it's so people really look at the whole body of facts, not just what's happening in the community. And it's easy to say not in my backyard, but being across the street, it's still in your backyard. Everyone's going to be on the LIE. Everyone's going to be sharing these same resources, and what hurts your neighbor is going to end up hurting you as well. So it gets down to how do we start to educate so the politicians and the community groups don't act out of fear just to shut something down before they understand it. That I see is getting harder and harder to do in this community, on Long Island. Again, we have jobs throughout the state and Northeast, and it hasn't quite gotten there yet. That level of concern, that level of fear. So I know one of the things you have developed with Rams is kind of take a analytical approach. If you could kind of dive into what Rams does, how it uses AI to take real data and facts to come up with a direction or just a recommendations based on factual data.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's definitely. So I met AI about 3-4 months ago, and when I got involved with it, I saw a tremendous asset of being able to deep research different technical details that are publicly available or available in the environmental records, be able to digest them, be able to understand what the critical information is, and then put that information to a test. Is this align with what's happening in the world? Like for Long Island's existence, is we have certain towns with certain assets. Certain towns have sand pits, certain towns have recycling facilities, certain towns have rail transportation facilities. But all those operate in apart from each other. They're not coordinated, which is okay because everybody has to have their own identity. We have different companies, we have different environmental and government structures. But if we share the data of what we're actually doing, what we're producing, what we're consuming, we can then balance out communities equally. So certain communities might have that rail siding, but they don't have the sand pit. Other communities might have a transfer station, but they don't have the incinerator. So it's a matter of using technology to do the deep dig, like SECRA. In tandem with the SECRA, we use the technology to match that process for the whole county. Then we can set up our assets and our liabilities. Each town has them. We have more waste. Some have more assets. So we balance them out. Then no particular community is taking any more brunt than the other community. So the whole process of using AI to do that is AI is a multiplier. So I'm one person. I can only do so much. So I can only look at so much data at once. That's why these environmental reports become voluminous and they've become extremely expensive. And because we need so many individuals crunching data and providing data sets. So the whole idea is that we can become more efficient by crunching data sets in parallel with the environmental reviews. Then we create a universal standard of the county. The county operates, this is where our needs are, and then we can explain to the public and educate the public in saying, we've done the deep dig. Here's the information. It's our waste. It's not any particular person's. It's our community as a whole. So then people will understand, okay, wait a minute. My waste in my town makes sense. Their waste in my town doesn't make sense. So why don't we just balance out our communities and package our communities together in planning groups and come up with real solutions and take the political burden out of it? Because the reality is waste, essential infrastructure, energy, water, waste management, sewage, these are individuals' burdens. Mine, yours, we share them equally. it's apolitical. But instead, we use these things as political tools to wedge and divide people. So, for instance, Town Line Rail. I put the project idea in there because I understood from what was going on Long Island was a waste crisis. So I said, okay, we have the rail, we have the facility, we have all the right components. So let's put our hat and say, if there truly is a waste crisis on Long Island, this facility, this location might be perfect for it. So we propose, we go through a federal process, brutal, expensive, 2.5 years, $1 million later, something that was supposed to be 1 year and $250,000 later. And it was only an environmental assessment. It wasn't even a secret.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there and you're saying, wow, not only that, but the whole community hates me. The very community my grandfather helped found, the very fire department my grandfather founded, the very buildings that he built, the people despise me. And I'm like, what's the deal with this? We're creating good solutions that we're not even pushing.
No,
I
was there, and that you're offering up a solution, and even that solution is not going to solve everything, but it's part of a multifaceted, approach. And again, if people like you, politicians, are not bringing up possible solutions, then we're keeping our heads buried in the sand for another, 3 or 4 years. 2 or 3 years that Brookhaven has left before it really hits. The problem really hits, and like you said, the permits and the planning and the approvals, we know are going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And at that point, it's almost, isn't it better to start to plan sooner? Even if it's not the solution of it, it's part of the solution.
Totally agree with that. I think that the issue is this. In 2014, Suffolk County came up with the Suffolk County Plan for waste management on Long Island. That plan has sat there, and it suggests rail transportation, it suggests intermodal, it suggests rail as a solution for Long Island. That document is 10 years old. We're no closer than we were 10 years ago. And there's been lots of pitches, but nobody, when it comes time to push to stand up, now I can't say everybody, when it's time to stand up for projects, politics steps in and priorities step in. And those politics and priorities ultimately hurt the general public. But it's understandably so, because the general public backlash is so big that nobody wants to take a bullet. And I get that. But if we use SECRA to explain to the public what the pros and cons to each operation scenario, we now have the sword of truth which tells us what the facts are. And then every politician could stand behind the facts, hopefully without political fallout, because it's the community. It's now representative of all of Long Island, not just Toby Carlson in Kings Park.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And the secret process, for some of you out there, is a long process that basically studies all the potential environmental impacts of a project. And that's exactly what it's designed for, to kind of look at data, look at the science, to really give the public and the decision makers what are the pros and cons of a possible project. What you're seeing so far with AI, the ability to digest data and to make the secret process, or at least portions of the secret process, and I haven't played around with it, mm-hmm. and I have noticed you have dove in. But what are you seeing as far as AI and the ability to kind of digest that data, quickly and efficiently? What it spits out, is it something that can be understood by John Q. Public and others that you've shared some of your findings with? How are they finding the results?
Well, actually, thank you. Good question. So here's where we stand, because that's really where do you stand with the whole thing. So AI, sheer brilliance. It's a fantastic database tool. It's a fantastic way to cut through tremendous amounts of information, pull out it basically takes out all the fuzz and leaves you with what the facts are, what the true elemental facts of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'll give you some of my process. Yes, I did send packets of information about AI and how it could balance out our government, our waste infrastructure, and I didn't really get any responses. It was like somebody took the air out of the room. And I think that's because, I don't know why that is. But on the heels of that, I'll explain to you what the next step for me has become. So as of today, we have Town Line Rail has decided to park the project. And by park the project, I'm saying we're no longer pursuing the project. And yeah, you didn't expect that,
Okay.
did you?
No. Listen, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a hard fight with, hard, expensive, long fight.
It's not that. It's not. The question is, what are we actually fighting for? So in my evolution of understanding myself and other people and what the dynamics are, in our particular situation, I've carried a weight for 3 years. In fact, I carried the weight my whole life in the industries that we're in because they're hard industries. Recycling, waste management, mining, sand and gravel. You have become the evil empire, no matter where you're from. That's not fair. We service. We work to serve. Those employees work to serve every day. We're working 24 hours a day to serve the public. People say, oh, well, they're just millionaires. No, we're hardworking people that have been dedicated to this community for generations. So here I am carrying this weight, pushing this along, dragging my whole team and myself through like a mud bath. I have a beautiful town board in Smithtown. Beautiful people. Excellent, intelligent, smart, sophisticated, care about their community, have done a lot of great things about their community. They're brave. They step up to the plate. Boom. Let's do a secra. You know what? Fair game. Let's do it. Public comes out. Backlash. So it triggered me. You know what? Where's the rest of the team? So sent out an email blast, and some great leaders responded to me right away. More great leaders talked to me and then gave me an opportunity to tell them my idea of how we could build a better way. But then crickets. And now election year comes. And now a great town board is being challenged by a leader from the same party as the town board. And you're looking at this being like, why is my project dividing communities? Why am I taking the brunt of this? Why is the town board standing up and everybody wants to fight them on it?
For trying to solve a problem that's affecting everyone in the town.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's the silence that's the problem. Yeah. It's the lack of communication. It's the lack of earnestness is the reason to kill the project. Because no town board, no individual should bear the weight of Long Island's waste crisis alone. All the very businesses that we support, that we work for, are major contractors. When I went to that hearing and got pounded, they were in the back of the room. People cower. People cower. And that town board doesn't deserve to be punished, and neither do I. And frankly, if the county and the state and the federal and the town and the community come into alignment and know that that's the solution, then I'm in. I don't think it's the public, because I've met a lot of people that support it. It's specific groups that are small voice, but because they're loud, they control the narrative. They control the politics. They control. And it's not fair to let a few influence the many. So at the end of the day, if the taxes are going to go up and trucking has got to increase, let it be on the hands of those groups that tear down what our community was built on, which was in 1880, when my grandfather showed up, he threw his hat in. He committed to Long Island. And we've been there ever since serving. It hasn't always been perfect.
No.
But guess what? Now's our time to keep going. And guess what? I'm not doing it with the weight anymore and without help.
Oh, agreed. And for someone who works, in my job, I work day in, day out with regulators. And, one thing I've always heard about your operations, DEC, other regulators have always been thrilled with how responsive and what clean operations you do run, and how, if there's an issue, they get addressed right away. You have an impeccable record from everything I've heard from the regulators on the back end.
Oh no, we believe and we committed to doing exactly the right things.
I'd like to thank Mr. Toby Carlson for being our guest on the PWGC Environmental Echo. It's been very informative. We're going to take a break here, and hopefully we'll see you in the next installment of the PWGC Environmental Echo with Mr. Toby Carlson. We'll hit on a few other topics. Thank you very much.